you ended up feeling every man's trauma.
Yes. Yeah. So that's so once this bond it just, the levels in which I went whilst breaking this bond, I began to feel the pain of all of the men that had been before me, all of the men,
and
all of
like
the pain.
Masculine. Now we're talking about masculine and feminine energies, about how the resistance, there's some resistance between the masculine and feminine energies within ourselves and within other.
Yeah.
So there was like this axis of information. We sort of ended up knowing that it was traits between the masculine and feminine.
Yeah. But it was mainly running through the male. I was releasing. It wasn't like the female line.
This day was all about the masculine.
It was all about the masculine
breaking
line.
That.
It was freeing like thousands of years of masculine
traits. Let's just tell them what the traits. I mean, this is not every masculine. Not everyone is born with these karma bonds and these trauma bonds. But these trauma bonds do go on generationally. So these patterns can be repeating not only for your parents now, but that your parents' parents and their parents and their parents, and it's like a repeating cycle that's been like transmuted down to each generation. And that bond, your bond, it was just coming from manipulation, controlling, dominance,
feminine dominance,
and you being in control.
I mean, and all men do this. We try to control how we feel. We don't allow ourselves to be vulnerable,
and a lot of ego identity was based upon this. I have to be a certain way to be able to be with women. Yourself.
It's the main driving force in men, because if when men really get to the root and they come really into the depths of their being, they find that on a real sort of core level, that man's biggest fear is his inability to truly connect and truly reach a woman deeply through his own love. And that's the reason why we shut off from our own love is because of shame. Shame is what actually turns us and shuts us off from our own love. So we have
guilt.
to pass
it's guilt and shame.
But we have to
because of the behaviours between the two, the guilt and the shame. It's like a yo-yo between the
cycle.
Both. And then you feel guilty because you're blaming. Through guilt you blame. With blame you hold shame. So it's like you're this cycle between. It's like this safety of be overriding this, but then also not feeling good enough. So then you don't feel like you deserve love. Like you cut off your pleasure with, like I've said in videos, with the guilt. You hold guilt, but you're blocking pleasure. So you end up punishing yourself by not enjoying the pleasures of life because you don't feel worthy enough, and that comes to shame again. So you're in this lower vibe chakra of these three chakras of fear, blame, and shame. You're going round and around and around because you can't break it. You can't get anything that's worth the light, the love, because you don't feel worthy of it. But it's just where the hell did this come from? And suddenly it
comes from our own darkness. It comes from our own darkness
because we don't feel worthy of our own light. Because of this suffering. But it's not just this suffering, it wasn't this. And this is where I think we should go into the fact that after that you released, we were okay, we were like, whoa, that was deep. I went and got a couple of apples just for a little midday snack, and then suddenly you were like, I was so drawn to these apples. Like, he's never bought apples, to be fair.
I've never bought apples.
He's never bought.
There's a story just buying the apples alone.
I know.
Like the pink lady stickers, I kept seeing them everywhere, and then I was walking in the shop and I was like, pink lady apples. This is before we'd even met. I kept seeing the little pink lady stickers, and I see the apples, and I've never bought pink lady apples. And I bought them.
And I've gone and I've taken a bite of one. I went, oh babe, do you fancy an apple? And I've thrown it at yours.
Then boom.
Because I bit one of them because it had a bit of black on it.
Yeah.
And then
we just both started getting hit with so much knowledge.
It was like, whoa, what was this? And suddenly it was like I went to another realm. I don't know where I went. You don't know where you went. But suddenly it was like goosebumps,
hair standing up.
Yeah, and then it was like, where are these apples? And then you went, pink lady. It's the feminine.
It's the feminine energy.
And then it went into,
and then it went
this
so
is like
deep,
past life. And then I was getting flashbacks of like all feminine, like empowerment of women and how the rising of the feminine, and suddenly I was going through generations back all the way to when tale as old as time, and
which
then
is,
it went boom,
Adam and Eve, and we was like shit.
But like I come from a Jewish family, and I learned a bit about the story of Adam and Eve back in Cheder, but I was so not really aware of the story. Like, you kind of know a little bit about it, right? But then we
started
suddenly
just having
accessing all of this information.
It was I've never experienced anything
and
like
suddenly
it.
I looked at you. You were eating the apple. While we're eating this apple, all this downloads,
information started to come through.
But it was. I mean, if anyone was in this room, and I'm surprised we're even. Sharing
I mean, we spent the whole week thinking like, this is on another level of craziness. Like, this is on another level.
If anyone was seeing us at the time, they would have been like, "You need to go to a
psychiatrist."
Yeah, psychiatrist, a psychiatric ward, because but obviously we're both experiencing this. Like, we're both pretty normal people. Yes, we're a bit spiritual. Yes, we're a bit more conscious, and we have these conscious conversations, and we're very deep. But I mean, we live a normal life. Like, we are grounded. We are
semi-normal.
Semi-normal. So in the same time, we were a bit like thrown back, thinking this is really crazy. But at the same time, you can't question.
There was so much synchronicity, so much coming together, so much happening.
I was finishing your sentences, you were finishing mine. Like, it was, we were in this zone. The thing is, when you knew something,
I knew something as well.
Yeah,
like, as soon as she had her intuition, I knew the same intuition that she was having. So we weren't even having to communicate with each other. We were just looking at each other and it was like, oh my God. Like,
so basically where this came from was, so then we had to Google it because we don't really know much of the story. I mean, we figured out a lot of the story, but we wanted to actually see what information we got of the Adam and Eve story.
Yeah.
And obviously we don't know if it's real, we don't know if it's fictional, but whatever we were accessing was like pure.
It was like
it was pure real.
It was pure.
And whether or not it was a fictional story and Adam and Eve were created, blah blah blah, whatever. But this access is like the first experience of mankind on this earth.
It's the first experience of mankind suffering on this earth.
Suffering on it, and it was like
blame, shame, and guilt.
Blame, shame, and guilt. And we found it because the one thing it said, even if you Google Adam and Eve story on Wikipedia, it comes up saying the root cause of all evil is shame.
Yeah,
and it was exactly what we'd been working through. And then we were like, well, why is it? Where did the shame come from? And it was because a little bit of the background of the story was Adam and Eve were the first. Well, actually, Adam was the first
Adam
mankind.
Was only Adam.
Yeah, only Adam. It was just Adam, and Adam broke off his right rib to create Eve because he wanted a companionship. He wanted to share his life on earth that God gave him with someone to enjoy the pleasures of life, to garden, to do whatever he wanted. He wanted a companion, so he created Eve so they could be a companionship together. So same soul, two different people, and this is the twin flame journey.
Yeah.
And this is why we were like we didn't even know we were twin flames until this moment. It was only after this
began to bond us on another level.
We were like, okay, this is strange, what's going on? Because we didn't know it was twin flame at all, did we? Even though I
knew that I had a deep love for you straight away.
Yeah, and I obviously same. And I've always believed in that twin flame. I've just not known who it was, but I knew I had one. But anyway, so same soul, two different people. So that initial breaking and then you creating me. The serpent comes along and bites the apple, or doesn't? It manipulates. It manipulates.
Yes,
Eve
the apple is pure manipulation.
To eat the apple that God told Adam not to eat the forbidden fruit, otherwise he will cast good and bad.
He will know from the knowledge of good and bad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he will cast the knowledge of good and bad onto the earth. So the manipulation came. Eve ate the apple and went, Adam,
pass the apple.
Adam had the apple. So I manipulated this one into eating the apple.
And then I blamed you.
But then you blamed me because God then casted all the evil and blah, blah, blah. And then
the shame come from the fact that you ate, that the woman took.
And then I felt shame because I felt shame for because you're blaming me for eating it. So I thought, oh my God, I've taken blame and I've created shame within myself, which has made me suppress. He's blaming me, which is making you the dominant, the manipulator, because then you were like make it out like it was my fault. So this manipulation went from the serpent to me to eat the apple, to give the apple to you to blame me, and then
that's
Eve
what
to
created
be suppressed.
The separation
it created the separation of man and woman because you were constantly blaming women, and we were like, how is it our fault? We didn't really know. We ended up being suppressed. And it was like I'd seen generations of suppressed women. And not only this, is that my grandma also came into this reading, and she's been around me for a long, long time, my great nan. And messages that have come to me a lot from her was, you've got the strength I never had. You've got the strength I never had. And unfortunately, I have come from the same kind of bond, which I will be going through in another video.
Because you've had a turn.
I've had a turn as well.
We've both had a turn. We didn't get out of this.
I just remember my grandma being there saying, look what women have had to go through for generations since life we know as we know it, of them having to be quiet, them not being able to have equal rights to men. And I'm talking about, this is generational stuff. And she was just gone, yes, you're getting it, you're understanding it, where this is coming from. And it's not just your parents, this is like generational.
Yeah,
and when you realise that, there is no fault and no blame. And especially when we realise that the blame and this, and you were blaming me that night. That day 2, he was like, but you gave me the apple. Like, we were going in. We were so deep.
That's because there was another layer to go.
I know, but it was. But we were like in this character of Adam and Eve, and you were like looking at me going, it's all your fault. You're the reason I'm holding this shame. You're the reason. And I ended up leaving at 4 a.m. because I was like, this is too weird for me. And I'm not sitting there taking your blame. Luckily, I've been able to stand up for myself, and I did walk away, didn't I? But the blame was coming onto me, and I was trying to make you see that I was like, but babe, who created Eve? You're blaming me.
Yeah.
Who created Eve?
Yeah.
He couldn't even acknowledge it. You couldn't acknowledge it.
No, that's because
only until day 3. You went, oh my God.
When I realised, but I had to. So basically, I broke the bond of shame. But then there's another level in which we've got to talk about in a later video about man allowing woman back into his life, and that's kind of like the final piece to the puzzle, which is allowing his own feminine energy back into him.
But you wanted control, you wanted I saw all of these characteristics come out when you were in this emotion, because we were finding out this emotion. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing, like we're finding out where this come from. I was like, well, actually you blamed yourself because you created me, but I'm like getting it, and you weren't getting it. But then this anger,
it wasn't.
Then you remember like stuff you were bringing up on like war, and how man created religion, man created war, man created all of this dividing of separation, of control, and I started to pass. It's not in every man, but it's been a super imbalance for so much time. Yeah. And it was like we were so onto something, but you really didn't want to take the responsibility.
The problem is, I was releasing all of that trauma, where I was actually breaking that trauma and feeding all of this trauma. I was in it. I was like in it for like.
Yeah, you were in it.
I was completely in it, so deeply in it. Yeah. And this is what happens when we suppress something, when we allow that to come up. We're not like just waves. That's what I was saying. But
it wasn't just your memories of your lifetime.
No, it wasn't. It was like mankind's memory. I was having like visions of war. I was having visions of like of skeletons, of just like carnage, of killing. I was just having all of these images coming up into my head because I was releasing this trauma. But obviously, because
whether it was your own lifetime or others, we don't even know. We don't even know what we were accessing. But it was exactly the same for me with the feminine, about the manipulation, because I was the manipulator in this. Obviously, the serpent manipulated me, and then I manipulated this one. So this manipulation and I know I've been carrying manipulation my whole life, and this was something else I kind of had an acknowledgement of. But because he was so deep in his, it was like this was resistance. This was the day. Day 2 was the day that I could have run a mile and never come back. And so could have you. Well, we would have obviously had to come back. But that runner chaser thing, because it was like this realization of, gosh, am I the manipulator? So I was like questioning as well, but we needed to separate that time. The separation stage.
Yeah, it brought so much. It brought so much conscious. You know, I've already been going through a journey of becoming more conscious, but this made everything conscious. Yes, everything. And as it made everything conscious, it left with one last thing. You know, when we hold on to shame, we repress love, and that's what happened to me on day number 3. Was I started to go through this real darkness to the point where I actually was happy. I wasn't going to go and kill myself, but I was happy to not be here anymore. That's how deep it went.
You said it a few times, and I was like, "This is day 3."
But this is day 3. Like the days.
We're still on day 2. Like that, obviously, this was the day 2 of just
breaking that generational shame trauma.
And it was hard for me to see you go through that. But it obviously triggered some bits within me as well, which we'll go into.
That's when I realised the biggest thing in my life.
Which was?
I'm not going to tell them. We'll make them wait until day 3.
Okay.
The secret, the key to life.
Yeah. Okay. Well, look, thank you for watching day 2, and I hope you guys stay tuned for day 3. because it gets even.
It's crazy. We had there's a reason we called it 7 days to union, because we was both breaking bonds all the way for 7 days straight. There just weren't no honeymoon period.
And
was it?
we were not.
We wouldn't have gone and got these if it wasn't something.
Deep.
If it wasn't something really deep.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Shall I leave that there?